welcome everyone to the Environmental Justice Thriving Communities Grantmaking Program information session. My name is Janelle Armstrong Brown, and I am a program manager at RTI International. RTI is an independent nonprofit dedicated to improving the human condition. We provide research, development, and technical services to local, state, and federal governments, nonprofits, and commercial clients worldwide. Within RTI, the Grantmakers program is held by the Transformative Research Unit for Equity, also known as TRUE, and that division transforms traditional research practices and mindsets to reimagine and create systems that advance equity and social justice. RTI is responsible for supporting the EPA Environmental Justice Thriving Community Grantmaking Program for Regions 4, 7, and National Central. Joining me today from the TCGM grantmaking team and the Community Investment Recovery Center, also the Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Center, and CERC and the React for EJ team, Resource for Assistance and Community Training in Region 4. And I am pleased to introduce who we have online. We have Laura Baum, Tatiana Bustos, we have Karen Straza, Yawande Addy, and I think, did I get everybody? Let's see everybody's face here. I think that was everybody here. So today's session will be recorded and available for replay. So I'd now like to hand it off to our grantmaker team, Dr. Yawande Addy.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Janelle. Again, welcome. I would like to jump in and give you some high-level objectives for today. So we'll be looking at EJTCGM and what it offers in Region 4. We'll be walking through how to use the funding notice to prepare a strong application, giving you insights on how to reach out to the TCTAC team for any personalized application assistance, and give you some direction on where to go if you need more information. By the end, you'll have a clear understanding of the program and the resources available to help you succeed. So let's get started. Next slide, please. So what is the EJTCGM program? Next slide. A little bit about the program. The goal of EJTCGM overall is to support capacity for organizations and to ensure that those organizations have access to federal funding, which we know oftentimes is consumed by larger organizations. TCGM is intended to increase efficiency for smaller organizations while also reducing common barriers to receiving funding. In fact, we're taking on a lot of the administrative tasks so that you don't have to. Another goal of TCGM is to encourage meaningful engagement. As we go through the slides, you'll see that the grantmaking program is really designed to put community members at the center of decision-making, both for the program and how the funding is used. Next slide. As my colleague Janelle mentioned, RTI is serving as a National Center grantmaker, which is shown in the map showing regions 4, 5, 6, and 7. We're also regional grantmakers for region 4 and 7. And in this role, RTI is working with a number of partners that are listed at the bottom in the development of the program. You can see them on the bottom of the screen there. Next slide. So, eligibility. This question comes up a lot. Who exactly and what organizations are eligible for these grant-making awards? There are a number of different organizations that fit into these categories, but mainly nonprofit organizations, community-based, and grassroots nonprofit organizations. You'll hear a recurring theme about ensuring access to federal funds for organizations that traditionally may not have the resources to compete for those funds due to being resource constrained. So eligible applicants also include local governments, tribal governments, colleges and universities, and institutes of higher education that have partnerships with nonprofit, grassroots, or community organizations. Individuals, for-profit businesses, and state or federal government entities are not eligible to apply for this program. Next slide. So what types of EJTCGM opportunities are there? The program is designed essentially in 4 funding compartments. The first being a non-competitive funding opportunity designed to help organizations build capacity to apply for the other three tiers at a later date. So again, these grants are not competitive. That means that they're going to be awarded directly to organizations that demonstrate an actual need. The application process is also going to be a little bit different for the non-competitive awards. There aren't as many questions. There's still going to be requirements for a budget and for a project, and applicants are required to give some information about the organization, but these awards will not be moving through the same review process as the other tiers. They'll go directly to our community advisory boards, or CABs, that are going to review the information and decide if an organization qualifies for a capacity building award. Once we get into the competitive tiers, the distinctions here really depend on what phase your project falls in. So tier 1 focuses on assessment projects, and this funding helps community-based organizations assess local environmental and public health concerns to better understand their community's needs. Tier 2 funding can support planning projects. So this involves planning activities like partnership building, public outreach, stakeholder coordination, training, or community cleanups to address any sort of environmental or health issues. Tier 3 funding is for carrying out projects that directly address local environmental and public health challenges. So it's important to note that you don't have to move through these tiers in order. For example, if your project is already in the planning phase, you would want to apply for a tier 2 grant. Again, the tier you apply to depends entirely on the current stage of your project. Next slide. Now let's talk about application deadlines. If your organization submits an application by that first cycle deadline, January 31st, 2025, it will be reviewed in the first quarter, with decision announcements happening also within that same quarter. Applications that are submitted after January 31st will roll into the second quarter review. And this rolling application and review process is done to ensure some flexibility. So no matter when you submit, funding decisions are going to be guided by community advisory boards. They're going to be making the decisions again because we want this process rooted in community. Next slide. Just building on insights around those CABs. CAB members will be employed to review the applications and decide which organizations get funding. There's also a component in the review process where there are external reviewers that will support the CABs, and their primary roles will be to utilize their lived experience and bring that expertise to the table to do an initial review of the application. The TCGM program also includes tribal liaisons who will work to ensure that meaningful outreach and connections with tribes and indigenous peoples is ongoing. The goal, again, is to ensure that this funding reaches communities to support projects aimed at mitigating environmental harm. Next slide, please. Once the application is submitted, RTI will conduct a 10-day administrative review. During that time, we're going to have a group that's going to take a look at your application, make sure that everything is there so we can move through the process, and you're not dealing with a long window of wait and see. You don't have to wonder, is my address right? Is it in the right format? Do I have the right zip code? Is there a problem with the UEI? Did I get the right tier, or am I applying to the right grant maker? Those are the types of issues that we'll help to resolve in that process. We're committing to a 10-day window for responding with any potential concerns with the application to make sure that no applicants left anything out, and then organizations can quickly address any issues that arise. Next slide. Oh, actually, let's go back to that previous slide. To help you further prepare, we've actually set up several upcoming webinars with multiple opportunities to attend. So please sign up if you haven't already to receive email updates. You can do that by visiting our website, thrivingenvironments.org, and signing up so that updates come straight to you on how to register. And these webinars will focus on different application elements. So the first one is all about applying for the non-competitive award. Our second session will offer guidance that helps you describe your organization. The third session is on developing your project, and the fourth webinar is all about developing your proposal budget. And so we're putting these webinars on in partnership with the regional TCTACs. And our hope is that there are multiple avenues for your organization to receive access for assistance for accessing TCGM funds. Now, next slide. Okay, so now we're going to spend a little time on the notice of funding opportunity. What is it, where is it, and how can it be helpful? Next slide. Our goal with the Notice of Funding Opportunity, which now is available on our website, thrivingenvironments.org, is to take all of the information that comes from the EPA and all the requirements around how to apply for federal funding and distill that into one document that you can essentially have in hand while you're preparing your application. It's designed to walk you through the process. It's also color-coded. So those sections of the NOFO around applying and preparing your application are bolded in one color. It walks through details on the review process. It breaks down the different steps and then also identifies points to receive program feedback because the community involvement process, again, is ongoing. Our goal isn't just to stop and start where we think is convenient, but to make sure that we're constantly getting feedback from you about how to refine the process. Next slide. Let's take another look at the TCGM grant tiers and focus on the financial details. So there are two types of awards, non-competitive and competitive. The non-competitive award provides $75,000 for building capacity over a 1-year period. This type of award is a fixed price grant, so it's not reimbursement based. Instead, payments are tied to milestones, which are outlined in advance and tracked throughout the year. Excuse me. On the other hand, the competitive awards are reimbursement-based, and they offer different funding levels depending on the tier. So Tier 1 provides up to $150,000 for 1 year. Tier 2 offers up to $250,000 for up to 2 years, and Tier 3 provides up to $350,000 for up to 2 years. If awarded, you'll work closely with a grants management officer who will guide you through invoicing, payment schedules, and any questions or challenges that you might face. We want to emphasize that the reimbursement model should not deter you from applying. Your grants management officer will be there to help make the process manageable. Next slide. As I mentioned earlier, one of the goals of the TCGM program is to reduce that administrative burden that often comes with applying for federal grants. That also means reducing the time and the effort for completing an application. Most of the questions in this application process are multiple choice or short answer. They're based on feedback that we receive from multiple listening sessions that actually outline difficulties that are commonly experienced when applying for funding. So we've outlined a system that also gives you the opportunity to receive email and notifications and adjust those preferences about different information that you would like to receive regarding the status and progress of your application. Next slide. In this slide, you can see we have a very detailed description of the information that's required in each section of the NOFO. The NOFO walks you through the application so you can have it in hand while filling out the application. There are also instructions on how to request support or ask questions. The application is also set up so that you can save your work and return anytime, so you won't lose any progress that you've made. If you need to break up your work and effort on the application, you can absolutely do that. You can also add multiple staff and volunteers or contributors to help with your application to work on it concurrently. Next slide. So what happens next after submission? We have a 4-step review process for those 3-tiered competitive awards. We're going to have an initial administrative review, hoping to keep that to no more than 10 days. That external review that we talked about from folks who are going to tap into their professional, technical, or lived experience during that process. We're expecting that to be about 2 to 3 weeks. And then it moves to those community advisory boards for review. And then we'll have our final notice of funding. And we're expecting all of this to happen within a 3 months or less timeline. Next slide. A little bit on those application submission timelines again. This just goes back to those cycles that we talked about earlier. Just want to show you again in case anyone is writing those down, although you don't have to because the slides and recording will be available for you later. If you're aiming to get a first quarter review and funding decision, you'll need to submit by that January 31st deadline, and then subsequent submissions will be reviewed on a rolling basis. Next slide. So now that you've heard my spiel, I'm going to hand things back over to my colleague Janelle to talk a bit about the Region 4 TCTAC.
Thanks so much, Yewande. I am excited to share the ways in which the EPA Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Centers are supporting communities in applying for the Grantmakers Program. Next slide, please. So this evening, we will be talking about 2 of these Thriving Community Technical Assistance Centers, and they're also known as TCTACs. And so there are 2 in Region 4. One, the Deep South Center for Environmental Justice, Community Investment Recovery Center, and representing CERC, as it's called, is Olivia Lopez. And then the other Technical Assistance Center for Region 4 is the Resource for Assistance and Community Training in Region 4, or REACT for EJ. And I'll be talking first about REACT for EJ and then handing it over to Olivia to talk about the CERC program. Next slide, please. So here, wanted to talk a little bit about the REACT for EJ program. It is a network of state and national partners, and we provide technical support to communities working on environmental justice issues. RTI International and the Environmental Protection Network are regional partners who work closely with state partners in each of the 8 states in Region 4. And as you can see, our Region 4 partners are noted on this map, along with the 6 federally recognized tribal nations located in Region 4. Next slide, please. The REACT for EJ team will be supporting organizations applying for an EJ TCGM award. This support is in addition to providing REACT for EJ's existing services to Region 4 residents. TCGM specific support services include weekly office hours, topical webinars, weekly application work sessions, and bi-weekly SAM.gov registration sessions led by EPN. Office hours will be held once a week. They are group-based virtual sessions via Zoom where questions are answered in real time. Pre-registration for these sessions is a requirement so that we can learn in advance and prepare what individual needs are prior to the session. You can register on the events page at www.reactforej.org. Our first office hour will be held on Monday, December 23rd, 2024, from 12 to 1 p.m. Eastern and 1 to 2 p.m. Central. Topical webinars will be held once or twice per week beginning in January and will be recorded. They will consist of 4 different topics that coincide with different sections of the application. That includes describing your organization, developing a project, creating a budget, and applying for the non-competitive awards. These sessions will also be recorded, and you can register on the TCGM website at Cultivating Healthy Environments on the applications page, and I believe the link will be dropped in the chat. We will also hold weekly application work sessions starting the week of January 6th, 2025. These virtual sessions will be group-based with breakout sessions that will focus on specific sections of the application. Again, pre-registration is required. You can register soon on the reactforej.org on the events page. Finally, the Environmental Protection Network, a regional partner of REACT for EJ, will be holding SAM.gov office hours every 2 weeks on Wednesdays from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern, 1 to 2 p.m. Central. These virtual sessions will provide help starting, continuing, or completing the SAM.gov process. Again, pre-registration is required, and you can register on the EPN website. If you find it at all difficult to attend these sessions because of timing, technology challenges, or other issues, please let us know via our website or 1-800 number so that we can find a better way to accommodate your needs. Next slide, please. So in addition to providing support for TCGM, specific what I just mentioned with the office hours and the work sessions, other React for EJ technical assistance services that we will offer for TCGM, as well as other funding opportunities, include partnership development, such as identifying partners, connecting with EJ groups, engaging communities, finding funding, project development, such as generating project ideas, developing grant writing skills, and navigating grant systems. Also identifying specific EJ issues impacting your community and using EJ tools like EJ Screen. We can also assist with connecting communities to subject matter experts in areas such as environmental quality, air and water quality, environmental health, mapping, and use of GIS and clean energy adoption. Next slide, please. Applicants are encouraged to access the webinars, office hours, and work sessions that I shared earlier to develop their application. React for EJ offices in each state are also available to assist applicants with related needs not covered in these sessions, such as identifying subject matter experts, using EJ tools, and connecting with local partners. You can submit a request for technical assistance or a question on our website at www.reactforej.org, or you can call us at 1-866-309-4559. You can also learn more about our services on our FAQ page on our website. We have lots of ways for you to get in touch with us, and we look forward to hearing from you. Now I'd like to turn it over to Olivia Lopez from CERC.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm Olivia, the Government and External Affairs Manager for the Community Investment Recovery Center, or CERC for short, which is the TCTAC program administered by the Deep South Center for Environmental Justice. And so we serve CBOs and tribes in EPA Region 4, along with the React for EJ team, and we serve those in EPA Region 6. And so I saw some questions about whether the Region 6 grantmaker application is dropped yet, and yes, it launched today. So I dropped the link in the chat and in response to some of the questions, so you all should be able to access that application now, which is really exciting. We offer technical assistance that builds the capacity of communities to apply for, secure, and manage grants. And next slide, please. A quick note about our TCTAC servicing model. I know we're a little bit time limited, so I'm just going to breeze through this slide, but the structure of our CERC is grounded in the Deep South Center's Communiversity model, as well as a project that we implemented last year called Activating Justice 40. And so both of these models, which were developed by our founder and executive director, Dr. Beverly Wright, put into practice the deep values of community engagement, mutual trust throughout the technical assistance process, hands-on, robust learning experiences. And so our model is a little bit different from some of the other regional TCTACs. And the piece that's different is that groups come into our CERC, not necessarily receiving one-off TA, but stay for a super holistic guided experience that ensures communities are building their broader capacity to secure and sustain funding well into the future. And so we're offering a new accelerated track for groups in our CERC who would prefer to and feel ready to move through our program more quickly, but the vast majority of groups that enter our program stay for a while, receive, the full menu of our TA with a guided navigator who walks them through the whole entire process until folks feel ready to apply for grants. And then you can circle back and receive more TA even after applying for a grant. And so that's a little bit about our model. We actually have a video on our website, which I'm going to link in the chat if folks want to go explore more about our services and our model. Next slide, please. Okay, let's talk about the TCGM technical support that we have available. We're here and prepared to assist applicants with first determining which tier or tiers of funding are best suited for you and your project. We know folks have a lot of questions about that, and so we're here and ready to answer those questions. Next, we also have a grants team that is ready to assist you with grant writing skills. We don't write grants for you, but we will do all that's necessary and all we can to prepare you to make a convincing case for funding and ensure that you can submit a strong proposal and application. We also help with project-based technical support as needed for Tier 3 projects. That looks like honing a grand idea into a fundable, implementable project, gathering data and knowledge to inform the development of your project, and other TA that you might need around project development. And if you have any questions about other types of TA that you might need as it relates to TCGM that you didn't see listed here, please feel free to reach out by emailing our CERC email, which I'm dropping in the chat. It's circ@dscej.org, and we're happy to answer any questions you have about different TA that we offer. But like the React for EJ team, we also offer services outside the scope of just TCGM, but for all grant opportunities. Next slide, please. And this is a note about how you can request TA from us, starting with new members, pictured on the right-hand side of the screen. If you are not currently enrolled in our CERC program and are interested in joining us to receive TCGM assistance, please fill out the capacity assessment that's on the bottom of our website. And I'll just link our website once more here. But if you scroll to the very bottom, you'll see our capacity assessment, which is more informally known as our TA request form. And so there is a note there on our website that says we have a waitlist activated, but given the demand for this grantmakers opportunity, we are going to start conducting intakes once more starting in January. And so we are reopening our application. Well, it's not really an application, it's a request form. So just look past that waitlist disclaimer when you request your TA. Also, when filling out the capacity assessment, feel free to make a note that you're specifically seeking TA for a TCGM. For groups in the audience who are already in CERC, thanks for being here. That was your first task, was to join one of these webinars to receive some background info. And so next, you will be contacted by your assigned navigator, if you haven't already, but you should have, regarding setting up a meeting to discuss the TCGM opportunity. If you'd prefer to reach out to them first, if you haven't heard from them, go for it. But you will be meeting with them, and during these one-on-one meetings with your navigator, please raise any initial questions that you have, and they'll work with others on our team to get those answered for you. You can also raise these questions via email on the front end so they know what questions you have before coming into the meeting. Your navigators will also guide you through next steps, which include scheduling the different types of TA that you need to get your application over the finish line, whether it be identifying a tier or a project development consultation, different things like that. You all will figure that out with your navigator. And take advantage of the TCGM office hours and info sessions that were highlighted by the React for EJ team towards the beginning of this call. It's helpful to go to all the different outlets you can to get your questions answered and get some information about the different types of TA you'll need. And next slide. Just happy to take any questions that you have during the designated Q&A portion of this call, or you can email your questions to circ@dscej.org. I'll also be looking through the Q&A function and seeing if I can help answer any questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Olivia, and just very excited about this. So what can you do now? Well, we're going to have our Q&A, of course, and as you are thinking about applying and as we're ramping up, we'd like to note several things that you can do to get ready for the opening of the application portal. First, think about your project needs. What do you need to do to address the issue in your community? Review the notice of funding opportunity. Check that your organization has a UEI. Brush up on budgeting. Ensure you are receiving email updates, and share your questions and interests, including reviewing applications or serving on a community advisory board. And again, here are the links to stay connected, and this is Region 4. Next slide, please. So again, here's information to stay connected. You can use this QR code. And I think we will be opening it up for questions. And I know that there have been lots of questions in the Q&A. And thank you all so much for putting those questions in there. And I think a lot of them have been answered. If you feel like your question has not been answered, please type it in the Q&A again, just to make sure that we have covered that. So I want to start off by, there's a question here wondering if the National Central funding has already opened. And I want to say I will send it to Tony, who is joining us.
Hi, thanks so much for that, Janelle. I apologize for being off camera. Just want to jump in really quickly and say we are going to launch our websites tomorrow that will have all of the information, all of the links, and all of the details around the launch and the opening of the program. But we've also had a soft launch, and so the answer is yes. The application SurveyMonkey Apply is open. And you are able to submit applications for the National Central Program.
Yes, and I saw Amy had a follow-up question. That is, Tony is referring to the National Central. So I wanted to go to another question, and if you are able to put your questions in the Q&A function, that'll be helpful to make sure that we are capturing all the questions and making sure that we answer them. So we have another question. If an organization is acting as a fiscal agent for a smaller organization, can the bigger organization simultaneously apply for their own funding? And I want to turn that to Tony again. Are you able to answer that one, Tony?
Yeah, thank you for that one too. So earlier in the webinar, we noted that we would have a series of topic-specific webinars, and I would ask that we hold that one for the budget webinar. What we will do, though, so for some of these questions today that really get into the details and specifics around your organization and applying, we're going to capture those. We can take that back and follow up afterwards. But again, that webinar around budgeting and finance is where we're really going to want to dive a lot deeper into some of those questions around similar to the one that was just raised.
Great, thank you so much, Tony. Next question we have, can this opportunity be leveraged with other federal funding?
Would you like for me to take that one, Janelle? I can.
Sure, thanks, Tony.
Sure. So the answer to that is yes. What we want to ensure is that the EJTCGM program is being used where there is a need and where there's a need to support particularly those projects that are going to advance environmental justice. But we understand there have been delays in some of the other grant programs. Maybe your organization has an application out for another grant and you're not sure if you're going to get awarded. That should not preclude you from applying to TCGM and also pursuing grant funding under this program. One thing I do want to call to your attention, though, is for those foundational support grants in EJTCGM and some of those tier 1 grants. If you have received grants from another IRA or bill funding program, you will want to be mindful of that, because what we are finding is organizations that have received grants from other programs may not be as capacity constrained as what's required in order to receive one of those grants. So just keep that in mind if you have received grants from another program. Long-winded way, again, of saying yes, you still can apply to EJTCGM.
Great. Thanks so much, Tony. I do want to ask that if you're able to put your questions in the Q&A. I did see a question about explaining the relevance of the community advisory boards and what is our responsibility to them? How do we reach them? Wondering if Tatiana could take that question.
Yes, and thank you so much for the question. So the relevance of the Community Advisory Board is to make, so the purpose of this infrastructure is to really have communities drive decisions related to projects that impact their everyday lives. And so that's the general premise of the Community Advisory Board. And someone else asked, who's going to be represented in these boards, and who's going to be represented are communities that face environmental burdens, who understand those experiences directly so that they can provide input on the applications that we are receiving and ultimately make final decisions for funding awards. And so that's the relevance. They're a very key component of this program. Our responsibility, and I'm assuming you mean like the applicant, is to just meet the eligibility of the evaluation criteria, which is provided in the NOFO, because that's essentially what the community advisory boards will be using to make decisions about the application. So I would advise to just take a look at the NOFO, the Notice of Funding Opportunity, to get more detail on what your application should be held responsible for meeting in terms of the criteria that will be used for the review process. There wouldn't be a point where you, as the applicant, would reach them, although they may be sharing, with us as part of the grant maker situation where they would be connected with the applicants directly. But that might be an opportunity in the future once the applicants are selected and things like that. But there's never a point where you would have to reach out to them. Oh, you lost my mic. Did you hear?
We can hear you. It just kind of went low.
Sorry about that. Hopefully.
There you are. Yes.
So I just want to emphasize that there wouldn't be a point. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you for confirming. I'll just repeat that there wouldn't be a point where you would be held responsible or reaching out to the community advisory boards directly. And what I was saying is to just make sure that you're reviewing the Notice of Funding Opportunity for the criteria that your application will be held accountable for. Those are the foundational components that you should be meeting. So nothing related to the community advisory boards, other than they will be making decisions about funding awards.
Great. Thanks so much, Tatiana. So next question that I see, will reviewers be making decisions about funding based on geographic distribution across the entire region? And I don't know if that's a Tony or Tatiana.
Sure, I can take that one. But Janelle, can you just reread that question, please?
Sure, absolutely. Will reviewers be making decisions about funding based on geographic distribution across the entire region?
Okay, thank you. So 2 things I want to clarify. Well, let me say it. One thing I want to clarify, and then to answer the question, I want to make sure that we're clear that there's a distinction between reviewers and the community advisory boards. So the reviewers are not going to be making final funding decisions, but what the reviewers will do is give essentially an early look at the applications, and then provide information to the community advisory boards, the CABs, to support the ultimate funding decision that will come out of the CABs. So the CABs are the final decision makers. On your question about geographic distribution of funds, I think that comes into, and it depends. So the community advisory boards are going to be reviewing those applications received in that cycle, review cycle for which the application was submitted. And they're going to be looking at feasibility and impact, and what burdens are being addressed. And so depending on the reach and the type of project and the extent of the project, then there could be a scenario where, or there should be a scenario where the location of the project and its reach across the region, it's going to impact which projects are going to be funded, or which projects would be awarded. So the answer, again, just to quickly recap, is that we do expect that CABs are going to be assessing reach across the region, because impact is a key aspect of project feasibility. And happy to take a follow-on to that question if that didn't quite answer.
Great. Thanks, Tony. And I'll let you know if there is a follow-up to that.
Okay, thank you.
So, next question. If there are other organizations applying with the same initiative, will TCTAC make recommendations for the two organizations to collaborate on the application? So I think that is a question for me that I can answer, and I'll also ping to Olivia to see if she has thoughts to add to that. So depending on where the organization enters into the TCTAC, so if it's within a state and the state knows that each organization has a similar initiative and each organization agrees that they would like to be in contact with another organization, we can bring those two organizations together. But we definitely would want to make sure that both are in agreement to connect with another organization. So that is one of the things that we want to be able to do as the TCTAC, is to connect organizations to each other to help leverage the resources that everyone has. So I'll see if Olivia has anything to add to that, and anyone from the TCTAC team if they wanted to add.
Yeah, I'll just chime in and said, I would say the exact same thing that you said. If there's mutual agreement and folks both agree that partnership is what they want, we're totally open to connecting you. Thanks, Janelle.
Great. And I'm trying to, this question is still up here, but I'm pretty sure we answered if an organization is acting as a fiscal agent for a smaller org, can the bigger org simultaneously apply for their own funding? I think that was answered, but I still see it on our open question.
Hey, Janelle, this is Tony. That's one where we will want to follow up. And I should say, I'm just not confident in what I believe the answer to be. And I want to make sure that what we're sharing in these info sessions is accurate. So that's full transparency that I would like to follow up with it, take that back to our teams and confirm that answer, and then share it out with participants.
Great. Thanks, Tony.
Sure.
And I see we have a question, and I think Tatiana's answering it. How do we start applying for the grant? Not sure what the first step is. So I don't know if Tatiana want to.
No, I was just marking it to answer live. I think that's a better question for Tony.
Oh, okay.
Sure, I'll take that.
Oh, okay.
Yes, so what we would suggest is starting with the NOFO. And so you'll want to have what we've kind of envisioned with the utility of the NOFO is to have it in one hand, and then your starting materials, so that information about your organization and your project in the other hand. And of course, starting with the link through SurveyMonkey Apply, the application that houses the tool that houses the application. But the NOFO really is your guide for that step-by-step process and how to move through submitting your application. And so I'm sure Yewande, in one of her slides, and I apologize, I did join the webinar a little bit late, but it outlines how the NOFO, you can save your information, you can come back to it later, you can share links with additional contributors from your team and organizations to also provide input on sections of the application, but it will take you step by step through how to prepare your application, what information to submit, what the word count is for the questions, and that's really going to be your guide. What we've also done in the NOFO is, I think it's almost every page, but at the bottom of the majority of the pages, there's going to be a, do you need help? And you can also send a note there or reach out, and we have staff ready to provide technical assistance if you run into a hurdle that the NOFO isn't helping with, and you need additional support there. So I'd suggest starting with the NOFO and using that as your guide for preparing your application materials, and then also as you move through your submission.
Great. Thank you, Tony. Sure. And I just wanted to add to that, that you can get in contact with the TCTAC. That's also another great place to get started on, you know, where do I go from here? We are set up and ready to assist as needed. And so definitely please use that information, get connected to the TCTACs, and there are 2 in Region 4. And we are ready to help assist you. So I think I'm seeing that we do not have any additional questions. And I'm going to do a nice pause. Give people time if they need to enter anything in that they may have missed.
In the meantime,
we also
I don't know if I wasn't sure if it popped up for you, Janelle, but if it's popped up for everyone else, now could be a great time to take a brief survey that we have. We'd love your feedback about today's session because your input is greatly appreciated. I can also go through a few housekeeping pieces, just some reminders. The PowerPoint slides and a recording of today's session will be available to attendees in the coming days. We'll be using questions from this session and other sessions to develop some updated FAQs that will be available on our website. If you have any additional questions that aren't answered on those FAQs, feel free to submit them via the Contact Us form at that website. Again, if you're interested in serving on a community advisory board, you could also visit our website, thrivingenvironments.org. Scroll down to the bottom of the page to the Stay Connected section to enter your information. Check that CAB box and any others that you're interested in. This will make sure that you're updated with any real-time information, especially info to register for the upcoming webinars. You're also welcome to follow us on social media for any future updates as well. I do see maybe one more question that's popped up in the chat. Just to confirm, This is a federal grant, but we will be submitting through SurveyMonkey. It is a federal grant. The application process, I want to confirm, will be hosted through SurveyMonkey.
Yes, that is correct. So, yes, EJTCGM is a federal grant funded under the infrastructure. Oh, Inflation Reduction Act. My goodness, my apologies, tongue got tied there. So, under the IRA. But you are correct. The grant will be administered through RTI systems. So through the Cultivating Healthy Environments program for EJTCGM. And our goal is to really streamline the process so that organizations don't experience what is traditionally cumbersome or difficult when navigating a common federal grant process. So we're confident that through SurveyMonkey Apply and the other applications through RTI systems, that this process has been streamlined considerably. And that's the goal. All right, Iwan, Dave, turning it back to you.
Well, I'm turning it back to the people. Thank you all so much to the program team for joining us, and thank you to the audience for attending today's information session and actively engaging with your questions and your input. I guess we'll close things out a little early, wishing you happy holidays in advance and looking forward to connecting with many of you in the new year via the webinars that we have coming up. So take care, everyone.